Hi, my name is Rochelle Nelson, and I want to share with you our story of how the Lord delivered us from demon oppression. Before I start my story, which there's a multiple different layers and different parts to this, but I just want to give you a little background into myself and my family. So me and my husband, we've been married for 11 years, and we were both raised in the Christian church. In fact, we were both raised in very conservative circles, both raised in Reformed, Orthodox, Presbyterian churches, where this kind of thing was just not mentioned. Until last year, I would have not thought that Christians could be oppressed by demons. And I will share with you a scripture that kind of changed my mind about that after this experience that we've had. But that is just where we were. And I mean, we still go to a Reformed Presbyterian church. And so that just gives you a little bit of background into this story, which is quite unusual. And I have yet to meet another Presbyterian with this story. So if you have come from those circles, I just encourage you to be open-minded, because this is what the Lord has been teaching and showing our family, and it has really changed our lives. So this story begins back in July, and I have three girls, and they are 9, 8, and 6 right now. And one of my children was really struggling. Just all summer long, she had been struggling with obedience. I would tell her, hey, don't do this thing, specifically, very clearly, don't do this thing. And then she would go do that exact thing. And I'm like, you're going to get in trouble for this. Why would you go do exactly what I told you not to do? And then my husband found her outside, and she is also an animal lover. She loves animals. She loves spiders. She loves bugs. She loves all types of animals, and she loves kitty cats. And my husband had found her outside hitting our cat with a stick. And so he was bringing her inside because he was going to have a talk with her. And something about this whole situation just sent warning bells through me. I was just like, something's wrong. Something's just not right. And I don't know what it is, but this is just not it's not who she is. It didn't make sense to me. And so I told my husband, you need to go and you need to talk with her and see why she did this, because something's just not adding up. And I kind of had this gut instinct, or, Holy Spirit insight, that there was something spiritual at work here. And I asked my husband to go talk to her, because I knew that when he was a child, he actually had some dark things kind of impacting him. And I didn't really know all the details of that. I just knew that he had struggled with that in the past, and I'd never really, delved into it further, but I was just like, you need to go talk to her and see if there's anything weird going on. And so he goes to talk to her, and he comes out and he tells me that what she told him was that she had been hearing voices in her head, and they would tell her to go do bad things. And if she didn't go do the bad thing, that they would make her itch. And I'm like, that is not just a story. That's true. I knew that she was telling the truth, because honestly, first of all, why would you make up the story that they make you itch? And second of all, during this same summer, she had come to me multiple times saying that she was itching all over. I would look at her head to toe, be like, there's nothing wrong with you. There's no rash. There's no hives. I don't know, kid, you're fine. Go play, right? I wasn't really taking her seriously, because I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what to do. She seemed just fine, right? And so I was like, that's true. And she, the poor thing, was scared to death about going to school in the fall, because she was worried that she would be trying to be good all day and that she was going to itch all day long. Now it's like, this is not okay. We have to stop this. We've got to figure out a solution. We've got to, find out how to stop this from happening. And of course, I knew that we needed to pray about it, right? But I was just like, we need some other help here because I don't know anything about this. I don't know how to pray over this type of situation. And I just felt like I just needed somebody who knew more about this. But that very evening, we had our whole family coming up. We were going and heading up to South Dakota to my grandma's memorial service the next day. Like, there was so many other things going on. And I was like, we'll have to deal with this, but we can't right now. And so I was just praying to the Lord that he was going to help bring a solution to us because I didn't know what we were going to do. And I didn't have the time to deal with it right then. And so fast forward, I was gone for another trip right after my grandma's memorial service. And I was hoping to talk to a friend of mine there because I felt like she might know something about this whole thing. But then we didn't end up getting to connect, which totally seems like not coincidence, right? That Satan would not want me to connect with her about this. But anyway, I end up getting home and I still haven't figured out a solution. And then we were supposed to have some family friends come up, and they were supposed to come up for a sleepover, and we had planned it for like months in advance. And she called me up on Tuesday, and she's like, I'm sorry, we can't come because my sister is coming in, and we never get to see her, It's like, oh man, that's a bummer, right? And then on Thursday, she calls me, and she's like, actually, we can still come up and visit because my sister's leaving in the morning on Friday. I'm like, okay, great. That's great. So then, unbeknownst to me, on Friday, my friend is literally coming down with a cold, and she almost canceled on me again. Do not think that's coincidence. But she didn't end up canceling. They came up, and so I gave her things for her cold, right? And so as we are just, chatting and catching up, I was showing her this part on my property where I'd love to have like an emotional healing center built someday. Who knows if it'll ever happen, but I was just telling her about it, and she was like, oh, that would be super cool because then I could come up and do things with you. And I was like, okay, well, what would you do? And she's like, deliverance. And I'm like, wait, what? You do what? I'm like, I am so glad you're here right now because I need to tell you what's going on and we need your help. And so we were like, okay, so she didn't feel comfortable praying over my child because she was like, I'd like someone more experienced to do that part, but we could start with praying over Philip because a lot of this stuff is coming down from him. And I was like, okay, great, let's do that. But we were like going to have dinner, it was like, it wasn't a rush, you know what I mean? And so unbeknownst to me, my husband's getting super tired at like 5:00 p.m., which he does not get tired at 5:00 p.m. And also when we have friends over, like he gets energized by that, not usually exhausted by that. And so I didn't know he was getting super tired, but he also didn't know about this whole conversation that I just had with my friend. So it's just super interesting because let me tell you, Satan will keep you. He will keep you from being prayed over in this way. He will try anyway. But the Lord will overcome. That's the thing. The Lord will overcome. Anyway, so he's getting super sleepy, and me and my friend were doing some other things before we were going to pray over him. And then her husband knocks on my door and he's like, hey, are we gonna, we're gonna be going soon because, it's 8:00 and Philip's getting really tired. And I was like, no. You can't leave yet. We have to pray over Philip. So we started praying. Well, they started praying over Philip. And of course I'm, there with him. And it was wild because he literally felt things like leaving his shoulder. I saw his shoulder like move. And he felt things leave his body. Okay. Now, little backstory about my husband, couple things. Number one, he was in the Marine Corps. He has been like clinically diagnosed with PTSD, paranoia, and schizophrenia. He also has been diagnosed with blood work for celiac disease for like 9 years. And he's had a multitude of allergies. In fact, that very summer, he was dealing with even more food allergies than normal. He could only eat 4 vegetables. Every other vegetable messed his gut up. He could only eat lettuce, onions, potatoes, and something else. I can't even remember. And he could only eat those 4 things. And so we had actually been working with a practitioner friend of mine to detox him from parasites because we figured out that that was, a root cause. Okay, so I tell you all that, and it's important to the story. After his deliverance, it was so interesting because over the next few days and weeks, we just noticed some things that were different. He was able to read the Bible. And that's a big deal because he hadn't actually been able to open the scriptures up and really read them. He had listened to the whole entire Bible probably 50 plus times in the last 10 years, but he had never been able to really open it up and just read it. In fact, he didn't read any books at all. He just really couldn't. He couldn't concentrate on them. He was able to read the Bible. He was able to read other books. And it was wild because he would open it up and he'd be reading and he's like, it's like a whole new book, even though he's listened to it at least 50 times, the whole thing through. That was one thing we noticed. Another thing we noticed is that his nightmares, especially when I was gone, stopped. So it used to be that when I would leave for a trip and I would be gone overnight, he would have horrible nightmares. He would have horrible premonitions that I was going to die. He wouldn't sleep very well. He would have voices in his head. And that was especially when I was gone. It would still happen when I was home, but it was worse when I was gone. And so interesting because I went to my sister's bachelorette party and he didn't have any nightmares or premonitions. He was able to sleep through the entire night just fine. And at this bachelorette party, I ended up talking with one of my sister's bridal attendants. And we were just chit-chatting. And we used to go to church together at RPCNA. And I was asking about her mom because her mom used to have all these health issues and she was never hardly at church. And so I'm just, checking in hey, how's your mom doing? And she's like, oh, my mom's fine. And I'm like, really? Fine. Okay, that's great. I'm really glad to hear that. And she's like, oh, yeah, she's always busy on prayer calls. I'm like, wait, prayer calls? What kind of prayer calls? And then she tells me deliverance prayer calls. And I'm like, wait, what? So in a matter of weeks, my friends, God brought multiple people into our lives that we literally have known for years that I didn't know did deliverance. How crazy is that? Okay. So I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Put that in my back pocket, right? I also am reading this book on audio about deliverance. And it was so interesting because I was on the way home from my sister's bridal shower and I'm listening to this book. And let me tell you, Satan did not want me hearing that because as I'm driving home, I literally had a semi almost crash into me and push me off the road. It was the closest I've ever been in an accident with a semi. And I just had to rebuke Satan right then and there. I was like, you leave me alone. Okay. Anyway. So that happened. Okay. Then I end up talking with the friend of mine at my sister's wedding. And she tells me about how they do this once a month group deliverance session. And I was like, oh, cool. Maybe I'll, hop in and see how that is. And so that was in my mind. And then in September, I ended up getting COVID, which was actually a spiritual attack. My energy would not heal. I was exhausted even after 2 weeks of having it. And it didn't lift until my friend prayed over me. And it was wild because when she prayed over me, I could literally feel my mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell. I could literally feel my mitochondria. It was so low on energy. And then as soon as she prayed over me, I could feel it just lift, boom. Gone. And my energy came back and I was totally fine. And she also prayed against something. It was attacking the back of my head. I don't know what it was, but there was something there. And I kid you not, I could literally feel the back of my head just tingling and warm. And it was the wildest thing. And I just felt so much better after she prayed over me. So that was totally a spiritual thing. But during that, I had some amazing prayer times with the Lord, and I was asking him like about this group deliverance session that was going to be in September, because I was stuck because my church was doing a women's retreat on that same weekend, or there was the group deliverance session. And I was like, Lord, what am I supposed to do? I don't know which one I should go to. And I just felt very clearly that I was supposed to go to the group deliverance session. So I missed the retreat, bummed about that, but I went to that. So let me back up for a second, because you might be asking, well, how was your daughter? So I got prayed over another time as well, a little bit earlier, and her symptoms completely went away. Like, she has not complained about itching everywhere ever since we both got prayed over. And also, so interesting, like, her behavior just changed. Like, I stopped having major issues with her. Like, she would listen to what I would say and she would be obedient. It was wild. It was amazing. Praise the Lord. So she is doing well. Okay, so fast forward to the group deliverance session. So in September, I go to this group deliverance session over Zoom, and I grab my husband. I'm like, "You're coming too. You're sitting down." I'm like, "We've got more to do. I'm sure of it." So we're both sitting through this group deliverance session. We have no idea what to expect, right? And they just start praying and asking the Holy Spirit to show them like what spirits are there. And they just start naming off spirits. And they named off about like 85 spirits. It was a little wild. And as they're praying, they're asking for the Lord to like bind the spirits together and like bring them out. And Philip could literally feel some of these spirits being bound up in his body and taken out. Crazy. Really crazy. Okay, and I didn't necessarily feel that, but he's very aware of like energetic stuff way more than I am. So he felt all of that happening, and it's wild. He also is so interesting because some of these spirit names were really bizarre, and I didn't recognize a lot of them. But he would have a memory or a picture with almost 70 of these names. Okay, and so we do this group deliverance session, and we're like, okay, great. We're going on our way, merry way, normal stuff for the rest of the day. Not thinking anything really big has happened at all. And my husband grabs like a, dairy-free ice cream sandwich from the freezer, and he eats it that night. Next day he comes in and he's like, so I actually accidentally had wheat yesterday and I'm totally fine. Like, my digestive system is fine. I don't have any issues at all. And I'm like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, I think it was the deliverance session. I'm like, whoa, what? And I'm like, that's wild. And I'm like, wait a minute, what about all your other allergies? So I start muscle testing him to see if I can find anything he's allergic to, because that's how I've always muscle tested him, to figure out what he couldn't have. I'd muscle test him, his body would be like, nope, can't do. So I start muscle testing him. I cannot find a single thing on his long list of allergies that he's still allergic to. And I'm like, I don't even trust my muscle testing at this point. I'm like, that's crazy. I asked a friend of mine, that practitioner who we hired to help Philip with his parasites. I messaged her, I'm like, could you do this weird favor for me? Can you please muscle test Philip and see if you can find any allergies? She muscle tests him. She's like, I can't find any either. And I'm like, What? The Lord literally healed my husband of all of his food allergies, and all of them were because of demon oppression. And we had no idea. We had no idea that was even a possibility, right? No clue. So not only was the demons affecting him emotionally, right? They were impacting his mental health, and they were doing, voices and nightmares and other things and fear. I forgot to tell you about that. I can literally count on the number of my fingers on my hands, I can literally count how many times we've ever gone swimming as a family, because when he was in the Marine Corps, he almost drowned multiple times in a swimming pool because of a training exercise, and he hated swimming pools. Like, he hated them. He didn't like them. He didn't want to go. And we went to a swimming pool after the first prayer session over him. And he, of his own will, dove into the 11-foot deep section, touched the bottom, came up, and was like, I am totally fine. I have no fear about being deep in water. Also, was demons, okay? It was crazy, just amazing. And I was like, it just blew my mind. It just blew my mind that we have been struggling for 10 plus years with mental health issues, allergies, and all of these things that were literally demons. And it's so interesting because I found this passage in the Bible, and it's Luke 13. And what really strikes me about this passage is that Jesus is in the temple. And he is, going there to worship. And there's this other woman there who's there to worship. And he sees that she is oppressed by a spirit of infirmity. Luke says it's a spirit of infirmity. So there are different spirits, okay? And she didn't even know it. She had been oppressed by this demon for 18 years. She didn't know it was a demon. She wasn't asking for Jesus to rescue her from a demon because she didn't know she had one. But he knew it. He knew it, and he cast it out, and she could stand for the first time in 18 years. And of course, the Pharisees get all upset about it, right? Because he's healing on the Sabbath. And he says, shouldn't a daughter of Abraham, be healed, basically? And what's so interesting about that is because clearly she was a believer. Clearly she was a believer that was being oppressed by demons. And the Lord healed her from that. And so this is our story. This is our story of deliverance. And I pray that it gives you hope. I pray that it gives you encouragement and enlightens you to perhaps some of your physical issues may not be entirely physical. Remember, we are a holistic beings. We are physical, emotional, and spiritual. And if there are things in a spiritual realm that are attacking you, they can impact your physical body. And you might think it's all physical, and it's probably not. In fact, the majority of our physical issues are either very many are a combination of emotional and spiritual more than they are physical. And some of them are purely spiritual, as we found out in my husband's case. Now, he still has parasites, so there is a physical aspect, but he can eat everything that he used to not be able to eat. Even though we're still doing the detoxing of the parasites, he can eat everything. So all of the food allergies were entirely spiritually caused. It just blows my mind. So that's our story.